I want to introduce our Associate Dean and Director of the Global EMBA Program, Professor Bala.
Hi, thank you, Christina. So good evening, everyone. Good day, good night, wherever you are. So it is really, great to be in the same space with you. I can't see all of you, but at least we're in the same space. For those of you who are in Shanghai or other cities that are experiencing, lockdowns, I really hope that you are doing well, you're doing safe. All I can tell you is just hang on there. I think we have a few, hopefully a couple more days, and then things should be getting better. But I understand that, these are, not so comfortable times, but, I hope you all are doing well. For the others, again, welcome to this evening's forum. This particular series of forum that we refer to as Beyond Charity really is kind of sponsored by the Global EMBA program, because we wanted to take the conversation beyond charity, basically, because we know, those of you who are related to CEIBS, you know that charity is a very active part of the school. A whole lot of EMBA students and alumni are involved personally at a company level, in groups with so many charity programs. But what we wanted to do is to kind of, stretch it a little bit further so that we can, invite people, thinkers, authors, CEOs, and so on, who are involved in putting ESG, right, ESG or CSR into practice, to listen to their thoughts and ideas as well, right, so that we might be able to learn some best practices. And really, when I received an email from our library, they do this every quarter or so, where they send all the new books that the library has purchased, and I saw this particular book, The Heart of Business, and I was attracted to the title of the book, and I was the first one to borrow this book, and I've read the book. And I was so impressed with with the book, especially the first part, which talks about the philosophy, behind the author's view, and I really felt good, because I feel that way too, so it was really nice to see that there is somebody who actually has written about it, right? So we are really glad that the author, Mr. Hubert Joly, is able to join us in person. So Hubert, welcome to Asia, welcome to China. We are really happy to see you, as part of the school CEIBS, as well as part of this global EMBA program, because I'm sure many of the audience that we have here are from this global EMBA program. So Hubert, responsible leadership is one of those things, one of the three pillars of CEIBS. And really your book, has been one of those that actually makes this responsible leadership part and parcel of life, right? Based on the philosophy that you have. So it's really good having you. All right, for our audience, let me have a quick introduction of Mr. Joly. Mr. Joly is a senior lecturer at the Harvard Business School, but more importantly, he was the former chairman and CEO of Best Buy. Now, those of you who have not heard of Best Buy, Hubert, I want to talk a little bit about Best Buy, because this may not be as popular here in this part of the world as in the US. Actually, Best Buy entered China in 2006, right? And they were in China for about 6 years. And they basically took a majority stake in Jiangsu 5-Star Appliances. This is a company based out of Nanjing. Actually, I'm very familiar with this, because many years ago, one of our global EMBA capstone project groups actually did a project on Best Buy and 5-Star. So this is, the world is so small in that sense. But of course, Best Buy exited out of China in 2011. That's another story. But for those of you who are not familiar with Best Buy, this is a similar company like Gome or Suning that we have in China, right? Hubert was the former CEO and chairman. He has been recognized as one of the top 100 CEOs in the world by Harvard Business Review, one of the top 30 CEOs in the world by Barron's, and one of the top 10 top CEOs in the US by Glassdoor, right? He has also been ranked as one of the top 50 management thinkers in the world by Thinkers 50, and he received the organization's 2021 Leadership Award. So really, I think I can go on, with very much more powerful introduction of Hubert. But in the interest of time, really, I want to stop there, and I want to welcome Hubert to this forum. Welcome, Hubert.
Thank you, Professor. And I have to start by saluting Caroline Lambert, who is my collaborator on writing The Heart of Business and lives in Shanghai. So she's part of the lockdown, of course, with everybody. And I also want to salute, they just texted me, we have a Best Buy team actually in Shanghai and Shenzhen. That's the team that is sourcing products from China. I had the opportunity to visit them many times, and several of them are on the call. So I send them all of my love and appreciation and recognition. More broadly, Professor, I'm so excited to have the opportunity to have this conversation with everyone this evening, and I really look forward to it.
Excellent. All right, so as was mentioned by Christina just now, we're going to have a conversation for about 30 minutes or so. And then the reading club of the Global EMBA program, they are going to screen through the questions from the audience and then throw some of those more difficult questions at you, Hubert. So I think we will leave the difficult ones for later. Yeah. So to get started, really, from what I have read, Hubert, you basically took over Best Buy during its very difficult times, right? I think at that time, Best Buy was having this major competition with Amazon. And I think pretty much people were giving up on Best Buy. But that was the time when you actually stepped in and took over. Really, can you tell us what it was like at that time? I think this was like 2011, 2012, something like that. And really, why did you accept that position?
So thank you. Yes, it was 2012. And at the time, Professor, everybody thought Best Buy was going to die. There was zero buy recommendation on the stock. The market cap was 2 times EBITDA. Amazon was going to kill us. And it was a very difficult time, imagine, for the employees, right, working at the company. Best Buy had been a very successful company up until maybe 2009, the leader in the US and in North America. But then their performance had started to decay. So when I got the call in May of 2012 from Jim Citrin at Spencer Stewart about the opportunity, and Jim is a good friend. I told him, Jim, you're crazy, right? I know nothing about retail, and they seem to be destined to die. So why are you calling me? And he said, no, they're not looking for a retailer. They're looking for somebody who can take a fresh perspective and do a turnaround. And you've done many turnarounds, so this is for you. So at least do me a favor. You have to study and take a look at it. And so I did. And it was an interesting lesson, Bala, because sometimes the press or the analysts, they have very definitive conclusion. But as leaders, we need to do our own diagnosis. And what I saw was 2 things. One, the world actually needed Best Buy. Because as customers, for some of our products, it's actually helpful to be able to touch, feel, see the products and ask questions. And then importantly, the vendors needed Best Buy because they invest, and you've seen that YY, the CEO of Lenovo, wrote the foreword for the Chinese translation of the book. These companies spend billions of dollars on R&D. They need a place where to showcase the fruit of their billions of dollars of investments, of R&D investments. And it's hard to build your own chain of stores. Apple did it, but it's hard. So they needed us. And the other observation was that while Best Buy had a lot of problems, all of them were self-inflicted. Prices were too high. The online shopping experience was bad. The speed of shipping was too slow. The experience in the stores deteriorated. The cost structure was bloated. What's the good news, right, for with self-inflicted problems. Well, you can fix them. I didn't need to call Jeff Bezos at Amazon and say, stop bothering us. I said, so that got me the sense that there was enough there to effectuate a turnaround. And so I told the board I wanted the job, and for some reason they gave it to me.
Yeah, well, right decision though. All right.
Oh, another lesson, Bala, is that the day I was announced, the share price went down by 10%. Now, in truth, on the same day, the board also announced that the founder, he was trying to do a take private. The board had decided not to take his offer. So we'll never know whether the 10% drop in the share price was due to skepticism about my leadership or to the board deciding not to pursue the offer.
But you had in the past also turned around other companies, right?
Indeed. That's
so you are the turnaround man, basically, right?
You could say that, yeah.
But I mean, so within a few years, you were able to turn, Best Buy around. So what do you think was the key to this success? I mean, because obviously, Hubert, in China right now, I mean, obviously, given the many challenges that we have in China, in Asia, this is going to be an important question, right? What was the key to this success that you were able to turn this around in just a few years?
Yes, well, thank you. A lot of the advice I was getting from analysts and investors was cut. The usual recipe with turnarounds: close stores, fire a lot of people. And the truth is, we looked, all of the stores were profitable, so I didn't think that closing stores was going to be a great strategy. And firing a lot of people implies that people were the problem. I thought people would be the solution. And so the secret sauce for the turnaround was a very human-centric approach. And it was in two phases. There was a first phase, which was the turnaround itself, Renew Blue, we called it, because the salespeople in the stores have a blue shirt.
Right.
And then the second phase, which was about growth, was building the new blue. And it was all about people and purpose. Now, of course, but every company on the planet says people is the most important thing, right? It's always. The question is, concretely, what do you do? What does that mean? So for us, that meant listening to the frontliners. And that's a big leadership lesson, especially in this very uncertain world. The leaders cannot be the know-it-all. We have to learn it all. And the best place where to learn is on the front line. So I spent my first week on the job as a CEO, working in a store in St. Cloud, Minnesota, with a badge CEO in training. And I spent the week asking 3 questions. What's working? What's not working? What do you need? And believe me, the frontliners had all of the answers. So my job was super easy: listen, take notes, and do as I was told. So it was start with people. It was also start with people at the top of the company. So in China, is it okay if I say I'm a bit of a Maoist? I think Chairman Mao said that fish rot from the head. He probably said it better than I'm doing. But in a turnaround, you have to make sure that you have the right team at the top, right? Because the problem probably came from the top. The other human elements in the turnaround was headcount reduction is a last resort. Priority number 1 is grow the revenue. It's amazing what revenue growth can do.
Right.
As we did to cost, and we took about $2 billion of cost out, focus on non-salary expenses, which at most companies is the bulk of the cost structure. So I'll take an example that actually I could see in Shanghai when I visited our Best Buy team there. At Best Buy, we sell a lot of TVs, right? They're thin, they're large, so they break. We would break for about $200 million worth of TVs every year. And we did a survey. Exactly 0% of customers want to buy a broken TV, right? Funny.
Wow, what a revelation.
And so if you can work with the vendors on the design of the TVs, the design of the packaging, you can work with the supply chain, the stores, to reduce we call it TV junk out, it's a good thing. And out of the $2 billion of cost takeout we've done, about, I think, close to 70% had nothing to do with people, right? And then the last thing in the first phase around people, was about creating energy. Another role we have as leaders is to create energy. In physics, we learned that energy is a finite quantity, not in a human organization. And our role is to create it. So how do we create energy? It's by co-creating the plan with the team, getting going, celebrating the early wins. And then if something is not working, maybe Professor, you and I worked on a project, it didn't work, we just say it. Oh, didn't work out. We're gonna need to rework this. We maybe needed some help. So a very human-centric approach, and an approach that's very focused on treating profit as an outcome. And so certainly in the second phase, building the new blue, and maybe we'll talk about it, we had a big focus on defining and pursuing a noble purpose. What is the good we want to do in the world? We called it enriching lives through technology. Maybe we'll come back to that. Placing people at the center, embracing all stakeholders in a declaration of interdependence, and in trading profit as an outcome, which I think is the is a philosophy that we need in business these days. It cannot be purely on the four walls and purely about maximizing profit.
Yeah, I mean, in your book, This Heart of Business, I mean, I think the importance of leading with a purpose, right? Having that humanity in you, is I think the crux of the book. And as you mentioned just now, this is not new, Hubert, in the sense that you hear so many organizations saying people first, and that is not new. But how is your philosophy in that sense different than just saying people first?
Yes, I think that today, and especially after the crisis of the last couple of years, most companies agree, most leaders agree with the principles, agree with the philosophy. What is hard is not being convinced. What is hard is doing it, because I say it in the book, so much of what I learned when I was at business school myself, when my early years as an executive, I started with McKinsey & Company, and then I was an executive at various companies. So much of what I learned is either wrong, dated, or incomplete, because it was, in truth, certainly in the US, this idea that it's all about making money and it's all about top-down leadership. And maybe if there's something new, not entirely new, but that's foundational in the thinking, and you see it in the book because the book starts with this, is the idea that leadership starts from within. And it's personal purpose that is the foundation for corporate purpose. So a key question that we can all ask ourselves as leaders, and at Harvard Business School, we do a workshop for new CEOs. Professor, we ask them to write down their retirement speech. And my wife, Hortense Legentil, who is an executive leadership coach, she asked our clients to write down their eulogy.
Correct.
Yes. What people are going to say on the day where you're not here to listen anymore. And one of the beliefs I have, not everybody needs to agree, but I certainly believe this, is that in the heart of every human being, there's a desire to do something good in the world. Even Darth Vader in Star Wars, his son believes that the Force is still in him. And so if as a human being, we decide, yes, we are clear about what good we want to do in the world when we are working, because what is a company? A company is a human organization made of individuals working together in pursuit of a goal. And so if you think about it like this, it's all about what the individuals of the company want, the good they want to do in the world. And a very practical question that everyone listening here can use is with their team, is to have a conversation with their team about getting to know them at a personal level, getting to know them, getting to know their life story, and getting to understand what drives them in life. And then discuss how you want to bring this to the work. And we did this at Best Buy as an executive team. I tell the story in the book. We also had it going on throughout the company. It's not just for the CEOs. At every level, that was something we encouraged, was to be very human and connect with our colleagues at a very human level and discuss what good do we want to do in the world.
But Hubert, I mean, I'm sure many would say that of course, as a CEO, you can bring about that transformation. You can go to your at the ground level and ask these questions and so on. But what about those who are still in the middle level management of a company, right? In that sense, how can they instill this idea of leading with a heart, right? Can this be done by people other than a CEO like yourself?
Yes, and I got an email yesterday from a young associate who used to work at Best Buy a few years. And she was telling me her experience. I'm just going to read, I'm not going to say the name, but I'm going to read a paragraph from her email. So this is somebody very much on the front line. I had just left Puerto Rico after 2 hurricanes had hit the highlands and landed in downtown Chicago. My English was not great, and I had never felt so dumb. Then she gives a number of personal aspects. She says she didn't, so her mother didn't support her. So she was in pain. And then her manager asked her, so tell me about your inspiration in life. Everything I could think of was the store, she said. And I felt foolish that I didn't have a better answer, but I felt my store was bulletproof from personal problems. Once I was there, I didn't want to leave. I even tried to convince my managers to decrease my compensation or be okay with me staying out of the clock so I could be allowed to work longer hours. And guided by the company's values, my former managers, and she names one, Duke, taught me everything I needed to know to succeed in my area. Most importantly, Best Buy's culture gave me the support that I needed to believe in myself. Duke even told me that he believed I would be sitting on the Best Buy board one day. And then the story continues, right? So this is on the front line. And I was not around. I mean, I actually met the associate a couple of years later, and we recently reconnected, which was very touching for me. So, and the book, Bala, was written for every manager at any level. This is not a book for CEOs. If I had wanted to do a book for CEOs, I would have done a gathering and we would have had a conversation and that would be it. Right, I didn't need to spend all of this time writing. This is for every leader at every level, and every day, each one of us, and by the way, at the minimum, we're the leaders of our lives, right? Every one of us gets to decide every day how we're going to show up, how we want to live our day, the difference we want to make on people around us. And so that's my answer. It's true. It's universally true. Now, if you're working in an organization where the environment is poisonous and toxic, and it violates your values, if you can, and if you cannot change these values, then maybe you should leave. But at most companies, you actually have the freedom to be a great human being. And the good news in the book, at least in my conviction, is that it's by having this focus on people, and whether it's the employees, the customers, the vendors, the shareholders, that and pursuing a noble purpose that makes sense from a business standpoint, you can actually create extraordinary business outcomes. So this is not about being nice and then losing money. No. This is leading with the heart and the brain, all of our body parts, and creating extraordinary outcomes, I think in a powerful fashion.
You mentioned just now about this noble purpose. I want to turn to that, because I think that having that purpose that is where you find meaning in life, right? At the workplace. I mean, to me, that on the one hand is very idealistic, but on the other, that would be the best thing that can happen to you, because we spend the best part of our lives, in the office at work, right? Yeah. So obviously, if that purpose is, sync with what my purpose in life should be, then, that would be perfect. So if I could ask you to elaborate a little bit more on this idea of a noble purpose for the company.
So I'll start again with the personal level, because work, we have to say it, right? Work has got a mixed reputation. In fact, in French, the word work is travail, which comes from Latin tripalium, which is an instrument of torture. So not good. And, you know, in the monotheist faith, Judeo-Christian or Muslim faith, you know, work has got a bad reputation because of some dude who sinned in paradise, right? And sometimes also people see work as something we do so that we can do something else. That's more fun. We can also see work as, again, our way to find meaning in our lives. And again, that's wonderful when it happens. The same is true for a business. You know, as business leaders, we can decide, you know, how we want to orient the company. The noble purpose idea that I talk about in the book is found at the intersection between four things. One, what the world needs. So what are human needs, important human needs that I want to address as a business? In other words, what good do I want to do in the world, but addressing human needs. What am I uniquely good at, right? In you know, serving these needs. What am I passionate about? And how can I make money? So at the intersection of these four circles is where you can find your noble purpose as a company. As a note, and you talked about it, this is not about philanthropy.
Right.
This is not about CSR or ESG, which are the things you do once you've made enough profit. No, this is a way to center the business about something that's useful to humanity. So to make it concrete, at Best Buy, you know, we said that we're actually not a retailer. We're a company that's here to enrich lives through technology. That's what we do. And the benefit of that is that, of course, it's more inspirational, but also it expands the addressable market. Because if you're a consumer electronics retailer, the only thing you do is you sell consumer electronics either online or in stores. But by addressing key human needs, you know, you can serve the customers outside of the stores. So we have this in-home advisor program. Well, we'll come to you. We'll come to your home. If you're redoing your family room, for example, in the US, we have large homes. You know, it's complex. So we'll come to you and we'll design a solution. We'll make it happen for you. And then we'll become your CIO or CTO for your home. You know, we all need that, right? Because we have so much electronics now in our homes. So another example is that Best Buy went into the part of the healthcare market, helping aging seniors live in their home independently longer with the help of technology. So we put sensors under their bed, under their sofa, in the kitchen, in the bathroom, and with remote monitoring and artificial intelligence in a care center, if something bad happens, you can detect it and then trigger an intervention. So think about your aging parents or grandparents. They're frail, and you may not live next door or with them, and so it's actually an important service that's sold through insurance companies, not the stores. And so, especially in this time of turmoil, reorienting the company around a purpose, right, as opposed to a way of doing business strategically is a good idea. Another example is Netflix. If Reed Hastings had thought about the business as DVD rental, he would be dead by now. But his purpose is entertain the world, and so there's a variety of ways they can do this. So if you choose that noble purpose, and if everything at the company is aligned around this, so the strategy, if the purpose becomes the cornerstone of the strategy, everything the company does is aligned with that. And then importantly, and that's the toughest part, the hardest part, if everybody at the company can write themselves into that story, can connect, and it's not about top down, Bala. Let's imagine that you and I walk into a Best Buy store maybe in 2017, and we tell the store general manager and the associates, we have some great news. We have a new corporate purpose, right? It's to enrich lives through technology. People are going to say, Bala, we love you, but we have no idea what you just said, right? It's corporate speech. And so it's not top down. It's creating an environment where everyone can write themselves, meaning can connect what drives them with their work and with the purpose of the company, and feel they're in an environment where they belong and that they can be the best version of themselves. A little bit like my story, the email I got yesterday from one of the associates, and that was widespread. That hopefully, we managed to do this at scale.
I mean, one of the things that I was thinking when I was reading your book, I'm not a CEO, right? And I don't have, of course, I manage the global EMBA program, but it's kind of different, right? But one of the things that that was interesting for me is that I was actually looking at my life. And if I have a purpose that is noble, and everything kind of begins to fall into place. So when I was reading your book, it was not just about how a CEO should be, it was also how, as an individual, what should I be doing, right? And how, once I have that noble purpose that is clear, then I know what I should do when, if I should do at all, and so on, right? So I think this is similar when we talk about as an organization, as a CEO. It's very similar to how we live our individual life too, right?
And Bala, this is so important what you just said, right? Because the world we live in, and I was 2 weeks ago at Harvard, I organized a seminar for a number of CEOs. And if you're a CEO or leading an organization at any level, the level of uncertainty in the world is quite extraordinary. The world has become quite chaotic. And the old approach of developing a long-term strategy is interesting, but not really fascinating, because you don't know what the world is going to be like. You have difficulty accessing, key materials for your supply chain. Your supply chain is disrupted. We may be heading into a recession in some part of the world. There's inflation. It's really hard. And so strategy is not as useful. You need it, but it's not as useful. And so from a leadership standpoint, I think that during COVID, you guys are currently experiencing that. When you cannot go outside, you have to go inside. You have to spend time with yourself. And I saw many leaders, certainly when COVID hit in the US in March of 2020, my successor at Best Buy, the wonderful Corey Barry, she had to deal with the COVID crisis. And together with our team, she was clear on her purpose, which is stewardship, make sure that what she does, make sure that what she's been given responsibility for, she leaves it in a better state than what she got. And then together with our team, she established some principles, right? We're going to prioritize the safety of the employees and the customers. Many people did this, of course. We're going to delay furloughing any employee for as long as humanly possible until the federal programs come into play. And then we're going to come out of this stronger as a company. Note that it was not about, and we're going to hit our quarterly earnings forecast. And so she framed it around purpose and principles or values. And then the only thing you can do is do your best. So I think that leadership today is not about being the smartest person in the room. It's not about having the answers, because the truth is we don't have the answers. It's about being purpose-driven, values-driven, and working with our teams and empowering our teams to do the best we can. So it's a significant shift in leadership, and it starts from within. It's leadership from the inside out.
Right. I just want to add a footnote to all our audience. Hubert also wrote an article in the Fortune recently about, I think he uses this idea of this noble purpose to talk about this decision as to whether a company should get out of Russia because of the crisis that is taking place in Ukraine. And you can see how he uses this idea of noble purpose, where you can actually come to a decision based on that noble purpose that you have. So that, I think that was also a great piece, Hubert. Hubert, I just want to ask one more question, with regards to this purpose. Because one of the things that I noticed in your book is you talk a lot about the influence of your Christian faith on your thoughts and your actions, right? I think in the foreword, your friend Bill George also talks about the influence of a Buddhist monk on his transformation. Now, I get this because religion also plays an important part in my life, so I can understand where you're coming from. But of course, when you talk about China, there are many people, including many of our audience, who may not have a religion or who may not be actively participating in religious activities, right? Given the nature of China. So if one does not have a religion, how does one find this noble purpose?
Yes, and when I was, CEO of Best Buy or other companies, I didn't start my speeches by a morning prayer or anything like this, because in fact there's a diversity of experiences. The source of my inspiration, yes, in fact, is in the Christian faith, but it's more in the realm of wisdom rather than faith. It's and one of the things, because I've studied, the various monotheist faiths, of course, but also some of the Asian spiritualities, such as Buddhism or Hinduism. I'm not an expert on Confucianism by any stretch of the imagination, but I've studied a little bit. I've also reread recently The Art of War. I'm a great admirer, of course, of the very rich history of your wonderful country. And one of the beliefs I have is that there's a lot of commonalities across cultures around the world, having led some global organizations. And it's this idea of the golden rule. It's doing something good to other people. I think that's something that you find that is universal.
The golden rule, right?
The golden rule.
Yeah.
It's not about being religious necessarily, but I think that as human beings, we have several body parts, right? We have our brain, we have our heart, I think we have a soul, right? And we have our guts, our ears, our eyes. And today, as leaders, we need to lead, I think we need to lead with all of our body parts. Our brain, our heart, our soul, our guts, our ears, our eyes. And a mistake I personally made for many years was I had my head cut off from the rest of my body. Because I thought, and certainly, I'd been trained, a great business school in France, and been a partner at McKinsey, so I was quite brainy, right? But that was a mistake. The role of the leader increasingly is not to come up with the right answer, if there is a right answer, but it's to create an environment where everybody can feel they belong and that they can be the best version of themselves. And that needs to rely on more than the brain, but also the heart and certainly the soul. So I think that you don't need to be a religious person by any stretch of the imagination. And I do believe that we all have in our heart a desire to do something good. And we also know we all share the same planet. We are interdependent. And so, and I love this quote, I'll finish with this. I love this quote from the Lebanese poet, Khalil Gibran.
Yeah.
Who said that work is love made visible.
Beautiful. I've been in China for 17 years now. And one thing that I have learned is that the Chinese people, may not have a religion, some of them, but I can certainly see that they are spiritual in nature. And I do think that there might be a difference between the two, and I think that's the reason why many of our audience, many of the leaders, business leaders in China will find your book useful, because I do think, at least my students at CEIBS in the alumni, I believe they have this very, very clear objective purpose, meaning in life, which is spiritual in nature. So
I'll say one more thing on this about so in 2007, when I was being interviewed by Marilyn Carlson Nelson to become potentially the CEO of Carlson Companies, which is the company her father had founded, and this was about being her successor. We were flying back from Paris to Minneapolis on our plane. So this was, imagine, an 8-hour interview. one of the questions she asked me was, Hubert, tell me about your soul. Now, that's a gutsy question, but I think it makes so much sense. And I don't, in interviews now, I don't ask the question exactly like this. I ask, tell me about you, about what kind of a leader you want to be, how you want to be remembered, these questions. But I think it underscores the fact that, you know, experience and expertise are important, but who this person is maybe even more important, because as leaders, maybe the most important decision we make is who do we put in positions of power? Because there's very little we can do on our own. And so you want somebody who knows something, but importantly, you want somebody who is able to create that environment that can, as we say in the book, unleash human magic. And that comes more, I think, from the heart and the soul and our personal journey as a leader, and being our full self at work, right? Not just our brain.
You know, one of my favorite questions that I like to ask during the interviews that we do with potential candidates for the global EMBA program is, what makes you happy?
Yeah.
And it, you know, it's one of those questions where, you know, it's like it takes a moment for you to think about what actually makes you happy, right?
Yeah.
I want to. I think I have only a few minutes left, but I want to talk a little bit about leadership. Your idea of leadership, because, you know, in the global EMBA program, you know, the emphasis on leadership is very strong, because I think at the end of the day, that's what a school like CEIBS does. You know, it helps, you know, transform leaders, right? So you in your book, you talk about this 5 Bs, right? This best qualities of leadership, which, you know, I find really good, right? For the benefit of the audience, the 5 Bs that Hubert talk about in the book is about being purposeful, being clear about who we serve, being conscious of what our true role is, being driven by values, and the last one I actually like, being authentic. Right? So Hubert, if I can ask you to spend this last few minutes that I have with you, you know, can you talk to us about these values that you would want to see in a leader? You know, and are these values universal?
Well, certainly every one individual and every organization can put more or less emphasis on different values, but it's certainly foundational. The most foundational one is integrity. It's because it's the basis for trust and you know, justice. The other values, I think, that are so foundational today in connection with leadership. You know, I'm going to respond by introducing maybe 4 or 5 words that we would never have used a few years ago in the context of leadership, but that now have become so essential. It's vulnerability, being able to say, I don't know, and I need help, or I've made a mistake. It's humility, and ego. You know, you need to have confidence in yourself, but if the ego becomes too strong, that's a problem. Empathy is so critical, because that's how we connect. It's through vulnerability and empathy that we connect through other human beings, and the human beings around us in the business world, but also in the world around us. Many of us are struggling. So recognizing that people around us are struggling, and it can be employees, can be customers. Having empathy for the customers is a great way to do a great job for customers. And I would say humanity. At the heart of business is really this idea of human connections, right? If we step back, all of our businesses, we can make them sound very complicated with a lot of jargons. At the end of the day, it's all about human beings doing other things for other human beings, whether they are employees, customers, vendors, the community, or the shareholders. And all of these ideas are in concept pretty simple, but the book, The Heart of Business, is really written as a handbook for every leader at any level who is convinced that we need to change, and yes, moving in that direction of leading from a place of purpose and with humanity is the right idea, but it's hard. So it's written as a handbook with a lot of examples and tools and concrete practices, and then reflection questions at the end of each chapter to help leaders move in that direction. So that's what I wanted to give to the next generation of leaders.
Excellent. These few terms that you were talking about, right? Justice, humility, empathy, humanity. I'm sure some of the audience saw the video, the promotional video that we played just now for the Global EMBA program. And in there, I talk about, how do you become a leader among leaders? Right. And I think these values like humility and humanity, and it becomes even more important, especially when you're talking about being, a leader among leaders. Yeah. I'm sure we can continue to talk about these things even longer, but I do want to give the chance for the reading club and our audience to ask you some questions. So Hubert, thank you so much for doing this for us. It has been a wonderful 40 minutes. To all the audience, guys, if you know me, please get this book, read this book. It's really a nice one. It does change, but I think when you read this book, read this with an open heart. Be open about it, and I think that can bring in that can raise a lot of questions and make you think about where you are and where you want to go. I think if those two questions are answered, I will definitely say that you will become a great leader. So Hubert, thank you so much. Christina, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to spend my time with you. I'll take my leave. I'll let the reading club take over. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Professor Bala, and thank you for great sharing, Hubert. This is Anita from GEMBA Class 2020. We are among the co-leadership for the reading club. So I think in your book, in your early chapters, you have mentioned there's one of the most powerful books you have ever read is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. So why is this book so powerful in your perspective? And at your current state, what does reading and writing mean to you at this stage? So
Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, may be one of the top bestsellers of the 20th century. For everybody, Viktor Frankl was with his family in a concentration camp during World War II in Germany, and unfortunately his family died. He survived because he was able to imagine himself after the war doing great things in the world. So in many ways, meaning helped him live. And he does a lot of reflection on the importance of meaning in life and how we can find meaning, how we can find our purpose. And one of the ways is through work. Work can be a way for us to find fulfillment as human beings. And there's not 2,000. I mean, there's giving, there's love, but again, back to Khalil Gibran, work is love made visible. So it's interesting that work is really essential. It almost defines our humanity. If you think about animals, they don't work. I mean, they can produce an effort, but they don't work meaningfully. And so I thought that was a very important light that he was shedding on that. And of course, it's a choice how we see work. I know that at most companies, unfortunately, it's a big waste. 80% of us don't feel engaged because we don't feel respected, or we don't feel that there's a good environment and so forth. So imagine the progress, the productivity, the growth potential if instead of having 20% of the employees highly engaged, it'd be 80%. It'd be extraordinary as an outcome. So I'm inspired by Viktor Frankl. Anita, what was the second part of your question?
Yeah, the second part of the question is, what does reading and writing mean to you at this phase of your life?
what does reading, what is the role of in writing? Oh, in my life today. Is your question, why did I write this book and why am I writing articles and so forth? Is that your question?
Essentially, how important reading and writing means to you.
Yes. So, I mean, I've been like a sponge. I've had the opportunity to absorb, learnings from so many different places. So I'm an avid buyer and reader of books. I buy more books than I read, but it's been, very inspiring for me. So I can quote, for example, two great books that have really had more recently a big influence on me. One is Discover Your True North by my good friend Bill George, who is the former CEO of Medtronic and now a professor at Harvard Business School. It's about the inner journey. And he says that he wrote the foreword for my book. He says that his book is about the inner journey, and the heart of business is then what you do to apply this in business. And of course, I have to mention my wife's book. I already mentioned her. Her book is called Aligned, Connecting Your True Self with the Leader You're Meant to Be. It's a beautiful book about the inner journey of the leader. And then writing, for me, is a way to fulfill my purpose, which is now to help the next generation of leaders. And that's one of the ways I can do this. The other ways I do this is by teaching at Harvard Business School, and then coaching or mentoring leaders in companies and organizations.
Merci, Hubert, for the sharing and also this amazing book. I really enjoyed the book, and I think the people that are going to read the book, they can see a lot of similarities with the leadership program we have at CEIBS. So I'm Fabian, and I'm part of GEMBA 2021, and I'm a member of the Reading Club as well. So we had a question from the Reading Club community. In multinational corporations, there are really deep culture and strong values. So that might be different in China or in the US or in Europe. So do you have any tip for like foreign senior executives that are going to lead some US company or that maybe are going to the US to have some senior executive position?
So advice for leaders who move to the US, like I did a long time ago, about being successful there. While I think, Fabian, there are universal values, as I discussed with Professor Bala, there are cultural differences. And it's a great book. I'm going to butcher the title of the book, but the author is Erin Meyer, M-E-Y-E-R. I think it's The Cultural Factor or something like this is the title of the book. She's a professor at INSEAD, and she does a great job of analyzing all of the nuances across cultures on a variety of dimensions. And the US, for example, is a very explicit culture. So people in the US are quite direct, and in a meeting they're going to say what they want to say, they're going to say it again, and then they're going to say what they have said. They're going to recap meetings, and that's because in the US is like a mosaic of cultures. So we cannot rely on implicit assumptions. In contrast, a culture like Japan, as you well know, has been an island for many, many centuries. And so it's a very uniform, much more than the US culture. And so you don't need to say things as explicitly in Japan if you're Japanese, because you understand each other. There's a lot of norms and so forth. So that's one of the differences. So I would read our book. What else could I tell you about the US? Is that it's such a, certainly in the business world, it's such a welcoming, embracing culture. It's very interesting. Today I'm in Austin, Texas, for a meeting of the Business Council, which is probably the top 200 CEOs in the US plus some international. And the ethnic diversity of these CEOs is just extraordinary. Sometimes in France, people ask me, "Oh, so Hubert, you're French. How is it to be a CEO in the US?" They accept. My good friend Satya Nadella is from India, and there's the CEO of Coca-Cola is British, the CEO of Pepsi is from Spain, There's Eric Yuan, the CEO of Zoom, of course, is from China. A lot of Sergey at Alphabet from Russia. Steve Jobs, his parents were from Syria. So a lot of ethnic diversity, and we're all in this, and we're trying our best to do something good.
Thank you, Hubert.
Thank you.
Hello, Hubert. This is James from GEMBA 20. I'm also a member of the Reading Club. And my next question for you is really about the Chinese version of your book. I know you have mentioned that the book has been out since February and the translation was not, leave it to the hands of the translator, the very capable Chinese translator. But I am wondering, has there been any interesting feedback that you have had from a Chinese readership or a Chinese audience about the values or the lessons that you're trying to teach in the book?
Well, and I certainly look forward to any feedback from people listening today. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can also write to me at Harvard. It's hjoly@hbs.edu with any comments or questions you have. What I'm finding is that there's so much we share. I was reading about the importance of purpose for Chinese consumers. Many Chinese consumers, I was reading some market research saying that majority of Chinese consumers want to do business with companies that are doing good things in the world. I don't know whether you would agree with that. Or as employees, we want to work for good companies. And we also know that, to quote my colleague at Harvard, Rebecca Anderson, if the planet is on fire, we're not going to have much of a business. So the realization that we can do well by doing good. During my trips to China, I had the opportunity to go to Hangzhou, meet with Alibaba, spend time with people at JD, and of course, when I became CEO, we still owned 5 stars, and then eventually I decided to divest because I don't think retail is a global business. So we had nothing to do in China as a retailer. We have a lot to do in China to source products and work with great Chinese companies. But so there's this sense of, we can do well by doing good. And that's universal. And these are the ideas in the book. And of course, the Chinese society and the US societies are different. The political systems are different. But, for the most part, day to day, we don't depend on the political system. Certainly in the US, it's more about what we do, how we want to live our lives, and the difference we want to make. So I'm feeling, based on my limited experience, I've been coming to China. My first trip was probably in 2004, so I'm no expert in China. When I was at Carlson, we had TGI Fridays, mainly in Beijing, and Radisson Hotels, Regent Hotels, and Carlson Wagon Travel. So I still have many friends in these businesses. But I'm no expert on China, but my impression is this. What would you say, James? What do you think that the values that are expressed in the book resonate with most people? Will resonate with most people in China? In fact, they may have invented them way before I did. What's your point of view?
I think so. I think a lot of what we've discussed over the past half hour is, they're quite universal in a lot of respects. Yeah. It's more about the humanity than a cultural.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I think among the audience, there are your large Best Buy Asian team as well. They are eager to say hi, and they are eager to read your book as well. So, so from your perspective, how do you view the stock performance for Best Buy post 2019 after your tenure as the CEO of the company? And shall we even look at the stock price as a measurement for the company's performance or value in your view?
Yes, the stock price is a very important consideration because the shareholders are a very important stakeholder. In the US, the shareholders are people who are taking care of our retirement. So you want them to do well. And my view is that you do well simultaneously. That's the recipe. You do well simultaneously for the employees, the customers, the vendors, the community, and the shareholders. So, of course, yesterday in the US was not a good day for the stock market. So I think Target announced very disappointing results for Q1. So they lost 26% their market cap in one day. And Best Buy, I think, lost 10% or something like this. But the share price is a very important consideration. And I'm very proud of the fact that the share price, when I was CEO, in November of 2012, it was $11. Earlier this year, I think it briefly hit $120. It's gone down since then because the stock market has not been good this year. But one thing. Okay. One of the things I'm very, very proud of is how the performance of the company has continued to improve after I stepped down as a CEO, because that's what you want to do. There are some CEOs who are going to say, oh no, things should collapse after I step down because that will prove how valuable I was. I think greater value, and it's our responsibility as leaders, is create a sustainable and a durable institution and pass the baton to a team that's going to take it to the next level. And how Corey Barry, my successor, and the Best Buy team are continuing to move things forward. I'm going to probably see Corey later today. That gives me a lot of joy.
There is another question on the Q&A from another Hubert, what's the core essence of great leader? So I think you've already answered a little bit this, and there is more in the book as well. But maybe we can see in your opinion, what is the difference between a leader now and a leader in the last 10 or 20 years? And what's the difference now with COVID? Also, what changed with COVID?
Thank you for the question, Fabian. I think last century, when I was growing up in business, the model of the leader was really the leader as the superhero. Usually he had all of the answers, was the smartest person in the room, and told other people what to do. And by the way, for many years, I suffered a little bit from that syndrome. I thought that my role was to be the smartest person. And I started to work with a coach. Highly recommend. Work with a coach helps you get better, right? And that's what I did with my good friend Marshall Goldsmith. I was very privileged to be as a coach. Now he's a personal friend. The problem with the model of the CEO, of the leader as a superhero, is that nobody wants to follow a leader like this. And then the second problem is that, of course, today in this chaotic world, nobody's got the answers. Certainly in the US, when COVID hit, most companies didn't have the manual on how to deal with COVID, or back to the office, or the war in Ukraine. Nobody knows. And so this superhero thing doesn't work. And I think the model for today is a purposeful human leader. At Best Buy, we had articulated the 5 Bs that Bala talked about. So it's being clear about your own purpose and being curious about the purpose of people around you. And at the highest level, be very focused on creating the environment in which others can be successful and can be the best version of themselves. And COVID, if anything, my publisher, Harvard Business Review Press in the US, told me that the book was going to be very timely before COVID. With COVID, it's become even more timely because the importance of vulnerability, humility, empathy, humanity, authenticity has gone up tremendously. And during COVID, when I was inside, even though I'm the eternal optimist, I had to say out loud, the world we live in is not working. We have to say it out loud. We have a health crisis, an economic crisis, societal issues in many countries, racial issues in many countries, and an environmental time bomb, geopolitical tensions. It's not working. Maybe for a few people, maybe for you, Fabian, it's working, but for most people. And so we have to say it out loud. It's not working. And what's the definition of madness? Right? Doing the same thing and hoping a different outcome. And so the whole approach around, shareholder primacy that, was very strong in the US, and top-down leadership, that we have to change that. And that's what the book advocates, is the reinvention of business around purpose and humanity.
Thank you, Hubert.
The next question is related to what you just said, Hubert. So, we need to reinvent the idea of top-down. As you said, a lot of the business truisms that we have learned may be outdated or need to be incomplete, right? So the next question is, how do you see the leadership and the values being driven from the bottom up? Because the opposite of top-down is bottom up. And particularly because it might be a challenge in a culture like China, where following the leader is set in Confucian values. So how did you navigate this during your time at Best Buy?
I think that context, so we can provide a recipe for every organization experience. And certainly when we moved from Renew Blue to building the New Blue, so from turnaround to growth, clearly I had to evolve leadership. During the Renew Blue, I was in match Amazon. This is the to invest in e-commerce and supply chain, the partnerships with Samsung and Microsoft and Apple and so forth. I was involved, a decision maker in most of these decisions. But in an organization, if the decisions that are made, are principally made by the senior leaders, it becomes a bottleneck. Right? Because there's only so much we can do as leaders. So at some point around 2016, and we got some help from a firm that facilitated that for us, I actually said, look, I am only responsible for maybe 4 decisions: the overall strategy of the company, who is on the team, the culture, and big investment decisions or mergers and acquisitions. That's it. For the rest, we're going to push decision making as far down as possible in the organization. So, for example, the strategy for our mobile phone business, right? At Best Buy, we sell a lot of mobile phones. I was not in charge of this. Jason was, and then we clarified decision making and how decisions were going to be made. So, because one of the problems, James, was that we were slowed down. So if a senior executive didn't like where something was going, they would raise their eyebrows like this, and people would freak out. It would freeze everything. And we say, we're not in the eyebrow raising business, right? If you want to provide input to Jason, have at it. But Jason is going to drive, and he's going to decide whether or not to take your input into account. So we had to be explicit about this. And I think it's all about autonomy, right? You don't want chaos. You want to unleash human magic within a frame. So the frame is the purpose. The frame is the values and the culture that you want to generate and develop. It's about also what decision are we talking about. So if you're working in a Best Buy store, you're not in charge of deciding what name is going to be in the building. It's going to be Best Buy. You're not in charge of the logo. But to take an example at a store level, one of the things we had done at some point, we had some of our best salespeople come up with the good questions or comments that one should make when selling a TV, for example. This is what you should ask. This is what you should say. This is how you do the demo. And it was very well done, really smart, except the salespeople hated it because it was too mechanical. It didn't give them the impression that, they could be themselves. And so we said, you can look at them if you want, but the guiding behavior is be human. Treat the customers as if they were a friend of yours. And so that was the frame. So to unleash that human magic, and in the book I talk about it, you need to put in place the ingredients that are going to make this possible. And there's 5 that I mentioned in the book. It's meaning, human connections, autonomy in a frame, creating a learning environment, and creating a growth environment. So it's the idea, not to be the smartest person in the room, but it's more like to be a gardener, to make sure the soil is going to be fertile and that all of the seeds, which are these human beings, can blossom at scale. So it's a different way to think about leadership. The other one I would mention is, because I'm working closely now with Amy Edmondson, who's another great professor at Harvard Business School, who's written this book about the fearless organization. She highlights the importance of psychological safety. And that's something we have to work on as well, right? Making sure that people feel that it's okay if they fail, you know, if something doesn't work out, it's okay. You know, nobody's going to die. You can make mistakes. You know, shouldn't make the same mistake 3 times. You know, you have to work on it, but you have to feel that it's a safe environment. That's very important.
Thank you, Hubert. I just want to share with you, you know, during your sharing, I was actually chatting to my team. I just said to them, I'm just so happy that I resonate with what he shared, because I love my work. And the opportunity, to be, I'm not, no, Bala, I mean it. And plus, you know, I get to do great things like bring such good content into this, you know, I'm also part of the alumni of this wonderful school. So I didn't know, I thought you were in New York. Now I know you woke up so early. You're in Texas, Austin now. This must be so early for you. Thank you so much for joining us. And I just want to make sure to let you know, whenever you come to Shanghai, you have a home here. You have a home here at the CEIBS campus. We would love it for you to come and meet our business community here.
That would be a privilege. I think the last time I was in China was probably in 2019 or something. So it's been way too long. And I would love to be back. And I accept your invitation. Yes. I had planned to be in China on the occasion of the launch of the Chinese translation of the book, but of course this pest, COVID, has made all of our lives more complicated. But I'm so grateful that today we had the opportunity to have this wonderful conversation. So more to come. I look forward to more opportunities. And if you're ever in Boston, you know, find me out. We have that other school. It's not as great, I'm sure, as your wonderful school, but we're doing our best. We're doing our best.
I will throw the best welcome party for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Thank you.
Keep well. Stay safe.
Goodbye.
You.